What is up, everybody? We are back again with another installation of Wicked. I am very, very excited because we are finally in to the last section, part 5 of Wicked. From my guesstimation, we've got about another 80 some pages to go. So this will be the first installation of the finale, and then the second read will absolutely be the finale. I'm so excited. We're nearing the end. Everything's coming to a head. Everything is wrapping up. I am so excited. And I just want to thank you guys so much for being on this journey with me. I know this has been one of the longer reads for a single book. There's been some delays. I've been dealing with my voice being what it is due to allergies and stuff. So I appreciate your patience. Thank you very much. You are a most gracious audience. So, without further ado, let us get into part 5 of Wicked. The Murder and Its Afterlife. Chapter 1. Afterward, there was a lot of discussion about what people had thought it was. The noise had seemed to come from all corners of the sky at once. Journalists, armed with the thesaurus and apocalyptic scriptures, fumbled and were defeated by it. A gulfy delinquescence of deranged and harnessed air, a volcano of the invisible, darkly construed. To the pleasure faithers with TikTok affections, it was the sound of clockworks uncoiling their springs and running down at a terrible speed. It was the release of vengeful energy. To the essentialists, it seemed as if the world had suddenly found itself too crammed with life, with cells splitting by the billions, molecules uncoupling to annihilation, atoms shuddering and juggernauting in their casings. To the superstitious, it was the collapsing of time. It was the oozing of the ills of the world into one crepuscular muscle, intent on stabbing the world to its core for once and for all. To the more traditionally religious, it was the blitzkrieg of vengeful angel armies, the awful name of the unnamed god sounding itself at last, surprise, and the evaporation of all hopes for mercy. One or two pretended to think it was squadrons of flying dragons overhead, trained for attack, breaking the sky from its moorings by the thrash of tripartite wings. In the wake of the destruction it caused, no one had the hubris or courage, or the prior experience, to lie and claim to have known the act of terror for what it was: a wind twisted up in a vortical braid. In short, a tornado. The lives of many Munchkinlanders were lost, along with square miles of topsoil from hundreds of years of cultivation. The shifting margins of sand in the eastern desert covered several villages without a trace, and no survivors were left to tell the tale of their suffering. Whirling like something from a nightmare, the wind funnel drove into whirling like something from... The wind funnel drove into Oz 30 miles north of Stone Spar End, and delicately maneuvered around Colwyn grounds, leaving every rose petal attached and every thorn in place. The tornado sliced through the corn basket, devastating the basis of the economy of the renegade nation, and petered out, as if by design, not only at the eastern terminus of the largely defunct Yellow Brick Road, but also at the precise spot, the hamlet of Center Munch, where, outside a local chapel, Nessa Rose was awarding prizes for perfect attendance at religious education classes. The storm dropped a house on her head. All the children survived to pray for Nessa Rose's soul at the memorial service. Perfect attendance was never more perfect. There were a great many jokes about the disaster, naturally. You can't hide from destiny, some said. That house had her name on it. That Nessa Rose, she was giving such a good speech about religious lessons. She really brought down the house. Everybody needs to grow up and leave home sometimes. But sometimes, home doesn't like it. What's the difference between a shooting star and a falling house? One, which is propitious, grants delicious wishes. The other, which is vicious, squishes witches. What's big, thick, makes the earth move, and wants to have its way with you? I don't know, but can you introduce me? Such a maelstrom had not been known in Oz before. Various terrorist groups claimed credit, especially when news got around that the Wicked Witch of the East, also known as the Eminent Throp, depending on your political stripe, had been snuffed out. It was not widely understood at first that the house carried passengers. The mere presence of a house of exotic design, set down almost intact upon the platform rigged up for the visiting dignitaries, was stretching credulity enough. That creatures might have survived such a fall was either patently unbelievable or a clear indication of the hand of the unnamed god in the affair. Predictably, there were a few blind people who suddenly cried, "I can see!" A lame pig that stood and danced a jig, only to be led away. That sort of thing. The alien girl, she called herself Dorothy, was by virtue of her survival elevated to living sainthood. The dog was merely annoying. Chapter 2. When the news of Nessa Rose's premature death arrived at Kyamo-ko by carrier pigeon, the witch was deep in an operation of sorts, stitching the wings of a white-crested male roc into the back muscles of one of her current crop of snow monkeys. She had more or less perfected the procedure, after years of botched and hideous failures, when mercy-killing seemed the only fair thing to do to the suffering subject. Fierro's old school books in the life sciences, from Dr. Nicodick's course, had given some leads. Also, the Grimoire had helped, if she was reading it correctly. She had found spells to convince the axial nerves to think skyward instead of treeward. And once she got it right, the winged monkeys seemed happy enough with their lot. She had yet to see a female monkey in her population produce a winged baby, but she still had hopes. Certainly, they had taken better to flying than they had to language. Chistery, now a patriarch in the castle menagerie, had plateaued at words of one syllable, and still seemed to have no clear idea of what he was saying. It was Chistery, in fact, who brought the pigeon's letter into Elphaba's operating salon. The witch had had him hold the fascia slasher while she unfolded the page. Shell's brief message told of the tornado and informed her of the memorial service, which was scheduled for several weeks later in the hope that she would receive this message in time to come. She put the message down and went back to work, placing grief and regret away from her. It was a tricky business, wing attachment, and the sedative she had administered to this monkey wouldn't last all morning. Chistery, it's time to help Nanny down the stairs, and find Lear if you can, and tell him I need to talk to him at lunch, she said, through her gritted teeth, glancing again at her own diagrams to make sure that she had the overlapping of muscle groups in the correct arrangement, front to back. It was an achievement, if Nanny could now make it to the dining room once a day. That's my job, that and sleeping, and Nanny does both very well, she said every single noontime when she arrived, hungry from her exertions on the stairs. Lear put out the cheese and bread and the occasional cold joint, at which the three of them hacked and nibbled, usually in an unsocial mood, before darting off to their afternoon chores. Lear was 14, and insisted he was going to accompany the witch to Colwyn grounds. "I've never been anywhere, except that time with the soldiers," he complained. "You never let me do anything." "Someone has to stay and take care of Nanny," said the witch. "Now there isn't any point in arguing about it." "Chistery can do it." "Chistery can't. He's getting forgetful, and between him and Nanny, they'd burn the place to the ground. No, there's no more discussion about it, Lear. You're not going. Besides, I'm going to have to travel on my broom, I think, to get there in time." "You never let me do anything." "You can do the washing up." "You know what I mean." "What's he arguing about now, sweet thing?" asked Nanny loudly. "Nothing," said the witch. "What's that you say?" Nothing. Aren't you going to tell her? Said Lear. She helped raise Nessa Rose, didn't she? She's too old. She doesn't need to know. She's 85. It'll only upset her. Nanny, said Lear, Nessie's dead. Hush, you useless boy, before I remove your testicles with my foot. Nessie did what? Screeched Nanny, looking rheumily out at them. Did, died, dead, intoned Chistery. Did what? Nessie died, said Lear. Nanny began to weep at the idea before she had even confirmed it. Can this be true, Elfie? Is your sister dead? Lear, you'll answer for this, said the witch. Yes, Nanny, I cannot lie to you. There was a storm, and a building collapsed. She went very peacefully, they say. She went straight to the bosom of Lurlina, said Nanny, sobbing. Lurlina's golden chariot came to take her home. She patted the piece of cheese on her plate, inexplicably. Then she buttered a napkin and took a bite. When do we leave for the funeral? You're too old to travel, dear. I'm going in a few days. Lear will stay and look after you. I will not, said Lear. He's a good boy, said Nanny, but not as good as Nessa Rose. Oh, sorrowful day. Lear, I'll take my tea in my room. I can't sit and talk to you as if nothing's happened. She hauled herself to her feet, leaning on Chistery's head. Chistery was devoted to her. You know, darling, she said to the witch, I don't think the boy is old enough to see to my needs. What if the castle is attacked again? Remember what happened the last time you went away. She made a small, accusatory moue. Nanny, the Arjiki militia guard this place day and night. The wizard's army is well housed in the town of Red Windmill down below. They have no intention of leaving that safe haven and risking decimation in these mountain passes, not after what they did. That was their skirmish. That was their campaign. Now they're just watchdogs. They staff the outpost to report signs of an invasion or trouble from the mountain clans. You know that. You have nothing to fear. I'm too old to be taken in chains like poor Sarima and her family, Nanny said. And how could you rescue me if you couldn't get them back? I'm still working on that, said the witch into Nanny's left ear. 7 years. You're very stubborn. It's my opinion they're all moldering in a common grave these 7 long years. Lear, you have to thank Lurlina that you weren't among them. I tried to rescue them, said Lear stubbornly, who had rewritten the escapade in his own mind to give himself a more heroic role. It was not longing for the companionship of soldiers, he told himself. No, it was a courageous effort to save the family. In fact, Commander Cherrystone, out of kindness, had Lear tied up and left him in a sack in someone's barn to prevent their having to incarcerate him with the others. The commander had not realized Lear was a bastard son of Fiero, for Lear himself did not know it. Yes, well, that's a good boy. Nanny was now distracted from the sad news, drifting back to the tragedy she remembered more viscerally. Of course I did everything I could, but Nanny was an old woman even then. Elfie, do you think they're dead? I could find out nothing, said the witch for the 10,000th time. If they were spirited to the Emerald City, or if they were murdered, I could not tell. You know this, Nanny. I bribed people. I spied around. I hired agents to follow every lead. I wrote to the Princess Nastoya of the Scrow for advice. I spent a year following every useless clue. You know this. Don't torture me with the memory of my failure. It was my failure, I'm sure, said Nanny peacefully. They all knew she didn't think so for a minute. I should have been younger and more vigorous. I'd have given that Commander Cherrystone a piece of my mind. And now Sarima is gone, and her sisters too. I suppose it's none of our fault, really, she concluded disingenuously, scowling at the witch. You had some place to go, so you went. Who can criticize you for that? But the image of Sarima in chains, Sarima as a decaying corpse, still withholding from the witch her forgiveness for Fiero's death, It pained her like water. "Give up, you old harridan," said the witch. "Must my own household whip me so? Go have your tea, you fiend." The witch sat down at last and thought of Nessarose, and what might come. The witch had tried to stay removed from the affairs of the political world, but she knew a change of leadership in Munchkinland could throw things out of balance, maybe to a positive effect. She felt a guilty lightness at the death of her sister. She made a list of things to bring with her to the memorial service. Foremost was a page of the Grimoire. In her chamber she pored over the huge, musty tome, and finally she ripped out an especially cryptic page. Its letters still continued to contort beneath her eyes, sometimes scrambling and unscrambling as she looked, as if they were formed by a colony of ants. Whenever she gazed at the book, meaning might emerge on a page that a day earlier had been ineligible chicken scratch, and meaning sometimes disappeared as she stared. She would ask her father, who with his holy eyes would see the truth better. Chapter 3. Colwyn Grounds was draped in black swags and purple bunting. When the witch arrived, she was greeted by a one-man, less-than-welcoming committee, a bearded Munchkinlander named Nip, who seemed to be concierge, janitor, and acting prime minister. "Your lineage no longer allows you any particular liberties in Munchkinland," she was told. "With the death of Nessarose, the honorific of eminence is at last abolished." The witch didn't much care, but she wasn't inclined to accept a unilateral dictum without a retort. She answered, "It is abolished when I accept that it is abolished." Not that the honorific had been used much in recent years. According to the occasional rambling letter from Frex, Nessarose had begun to be Nessarose had begun to be amused by the slur of Wicked Witch of the East, and had considered it a public penance worthy of a person with such high moral standing. She even took to referring to herself as such. Nip showed her to her room. "I don't need much," said the Wicked Witch of the West, as, in contrast, she allowed herself to be called, at least by these Munchkinlanders upstairs. "A bed for a couple of days, and I'd like to see my father and attend the service. I'll collect a few things and be off soon. Now, do you know if our brother Shell will be here?" "Shell has disappeared again," said Nip. "He left his regards. There is a mission he is undertaking in the Gillikus. It can't wait. Some of us think he is defecting, worried about a change in government here now that the tyrant is dead. As well he might," he added coldly. "Have you fresh towels?" "I don't use them," said the witch. "It's all right. Go away now." She was very tired and sad. At 63, Frex was even balder and his beard whiter than he had been last time. His shoulders hunched in as if trying to meet each other. His head sank into a natural cavity made by a deteriorating spine and neck. He sat covered by a blanket on the veranda. "And who is this?" he said when the witch came up and sat next to him. She realized his sight had nearly gone for good. "It's your other daughter, Papa," she said. "The one that's left." "Fabula," he said. "What will I do without my pretty Nessarose? How will I live without my pet?" She held his hand until he fell asleep, and wiped his face, though his tears burned her skin. The liberated Munchkinlanders were destroying the house. The witch had no use for such frippery, but it seemed a shame to waste a property this way. Desecration was so short-sighted. Didn't they know that, however they now decided to live, Colwyn Grounds could be their Parliament building? She spent time with her father, but they didn't speak much. One morning he was more alert and energetic than usual. He asked her if she really was a witch. "Oh, well, what's a witch? Who has ever trusted language in this family?" she replied. "Father, will you look at something for me? Will you tell me what you see?" She withdrew from an inner pocket the page of the Grimoire, and she unfolded it like a large napkin on his lap. He ran his hands over it as if he could pick up meaning through his fingertips, and then he held it near, peering and squinting. "What do you see?" she asked. "Can you tell me the nature of this writing? Is it for good or for ill?" "The markings are crisp enough and large. I ought to be able to make it out." He turned it upside down. "But, little Fabula, I can't read this alphabet. It is in a foreign tongue. Can you?" "Well, sometimes I seem to be able to, but the talent is fleeting," said the witch. "I don't know if it's my eyes or if it's the manuscript that's being tricky." "You always had strong eyes," said her father. "Even as a toddler, you could see things no one else could." "Ha," she said. "I don't know what you mean." "You had a looking-glass that sweet Turtle-Heart made for you, and you looked in it as if you could see other worlds, other times." I was probably looking at myself. But they both knew that wasn't true, and Frex, for once, said so. "You didn't look at yourself," he said. "You hated to. You hated your skin, your sharp features, your strange eyes." "Where did I learn that hate?" she asked. "You were born knowing it," he said. "It was a curse. You were born to curse my life." He patted her hand affectionately, as if he didn't mean much by this. "When you lost your weird baby teeth, and your second teeth came in normally, we all relaxed a little. But for the first couple of years, until Nessa Rose was born, you were a little beast. Only when saintly Nessa Rose was delivered to us, even more scarred than you, did you settle down, like a normal child." "Why was I cursed to be different?" she said. "You are a holy man. You must know." "You are my fault," he said. Despite his words, he was somehow pinning blame on her instead of himself, though she still wasn't clever enough to see how this was done. "For what I failed to do, you were born to plague me. But don't worry yourself about it now," he added. "That's all long ago." "And Nessa Rose?" she asked. "How do the weights and balances of shame and guilt account for her?" "She is a portrait of the lax morals of your mother," Frex said calmly. "And that's why you could love her so much," said the witch, "because her human frailty wasn't your fault." "Don't stew so. You always stewed," Frex said. "And now she's dead. So what does it matter? My life is still running on, but mine is running out," he answered sadly. So she put his hand back on his lap and kissed him gently, and folded up the page of the Grimoire and tucked it in her pocket. Then she turned to greet the person approaching them across the lawn. She thought it was someone with tea. Frex was still accorded a measure of service, due to his age and his mildness, and, she supposed, his vocation. But she stood and pressed down the front of her homespun black skirt when she saw who it was. "Miss Glinda of the Arduennas," she said, her heart churring. "Oh, you came. I knew you would," said Glinda. "Miss Elphaba, the last true eminent Throp, no matter what they say." Glinda approached slowly, either through age or shyness, or because her ridiculous gown weighed so much that it was hard for her to get up enough steam to stride. She looked like a huge Glindaberry bush, was all the witch could think. Under that skirt there must be a bustle the size of the dome of St. Florix. There were sequins and furbelows, and a sort of history of Oz, it seemed, stitched in Traputino in 6 or 7 ovoid panels all around the skirting. But her face, beneath the powdered skin, the wrinkles at eyelid and mouth, was the face of the timid schoolgirl from the Pertha Hills. "You haven't changed a whit," said Glinda. "Is this your father?" The witch nodded, but shushed her. Frex had dropped off again. "Come, we'll walk in the gardens before they root up the roses out of some benighted attempt at eradicating injustice." The witch took Glinda's arm. "Glinda, you look hideous in that get-up. I thought you'd have developed some sense by now." "When in the provinces," she said, "you have to show them a little style. I don't think it's so bad. Or are the satin bells at the shoulder a bit too excessive? Agreed the witch. Someone get the scissors. This is a disaster. They laughed. My dear, what they've done to this grand old place, said Glinda. Look, those pediments are meant to support graven urns, and those revolutionary slogans are all painted all over that exquisite belvedere. I hope you'll have something done, Elfie. There isn't a belvedere to match that outside of the capital. I never had the love of architecture that you did, Glinda, said the witch. I just read the slogans. She walked all over us. Why shouldn't they paint all over her belvedere? If she did, in fact, walk all over them. Tyrants come and go. Belvederes are forever, said Glinda. I can recommend top-notch restorers the moment you ask. I hear you were one of the first on the scene, said the witch, when Nessarose died. How did that come to be? Sir Chuffrey, my hubby, he has some investments in pork futures, you know, and Munchkinland is trying to diversify its economic base so as not to be at the mercy of Gillikin Banks and the Emerald City Corn Exchange. You never know what relationship might develop between Munchkinland and the rest of Oz, and it's best to be prepared. So where Sir Chuffrey does business, I do good. It's a partnership made in heaven. You know I have more money than I can give away. She giggled and squeezed the witch's arm. I never imagined that doing public charity would provide such a rush. So you were in Munchkinland? Yes. I had been at an orphanage on the shores of Mossmere, and for a lark I thought I'd go to the game park. They have dragons there now, and I'd never seen a dragon. So I was scarcely a dozen miles away when the storm hit. We had terrible winds even there. I cannot imagine how a ceremony could have been in progress in Center Munch. In Mossmere, there were whole sections of the park closed to visitors due to the fear of falling trees and escaping animals. Oh, so they call it a game park? With animals? Said the witch. You must go, dear. It's a lark. Well, as I was saying, the house came right out of the blue, and I suppose I mean that literally. If they'd sensed a big storm, they'd surely have canceled the event and run for cover. Anyway, the news system is very advanced now in parts of Munchkinland. Nessarose herself oversaw a system of beacons and tick-tock code signals to warn invasions from the wizard and points west, so it was only a matter of minutes before the news was being flashed in all directions. I commandeered a mature phoenix and asked her to bring me to Center Munch, and I arrived before most of the locals had quite figured out what had hit them. Tell me about it, said the witch. You'll be pleased to hear there was no blood. I ventured to guess there were massive internal injuries, but there was no blood. Of course, Nessarose's last few devoted followers thought this meant her spirit was taken up intact, and that she suffered little. I don't imagine she suffered much. Not with that kind of clonk on the noggin. Her more unhappy subjects, who were greater in number, thought it a droll act of Lurlina, releasing them from Nessarose's particular sort of fundamentalist bondage. There was revelry when I arrived, and much fetting of the funny girl and the dog who seemed to have lived in the house. Oh, who's that? Said the witch, who hadn't heard this part. Well, you know how Munchkinlanders bow and scrape no matter what their democratic inclinations. No sooner had I arrived than they deferred to me, introducing me as a witch. I tried to correct them. A sorceress is really much more apt, but never mind. It was no doubt the outfit. It cowed them. I was in a salmon-pink fantasy that day, and it really suited me. Go on, said the witch, who had never liked talking about clothes. Well, the child introduced herself. Dorothy, from Kansas. I didn't know the place and said as much. She appeared as much surprised as anyone else about what had happened, and she had a nasty little pooch yapping about her heels. Tata or Toto or something. Toto. So this Dorothy was in some state of shock, I can tell you. A fairly homely little girl with little fashion sense, but I suppose that comes later in life for some than others. She glanced sideways at the witch. Much later, in some cases. and they both chuckled at that. Dorothy supposed she should try to get back to her home, but as she couldn't remember having studied anything about Oz in school, nor could I recall a place named Kansas, we decided that she should look for help elsewhere. The fickle Munchkinlanders seemed ready to nominate her as Nessie's successor, which would have angered Nip and all those ministers in Colwyn Grounds who've spent their careers jockeying for position when and if Nessa Rose ever saw fit to die. Besides, there may be other developments afoot. Dorothy might have gotten in the way. An eye to public affairs. Well, somehow I'm not impressed, said the witch, in fact quite pleased. I always knew you were in there somewhere, Glinda. Well, I thought the better move would be to get Dorothy out of Munchkinland before a civil war tore this place up even worse than it already is. There are factions, you know, who support the reannexation of Munchkinland by Oz. It would do the girl no good to get caught in the crossfire of opposing interests. Oh, so she's not here, said the witch. I had thought I'd meet her. Dorothy? Now, you're not going to take against her, are you? Said Glinda. She's a child, really. Big, by Munchkinlander standards, of course, but a squat little thing nonetheless. She's an innocent, Elfie. I can see by the gleam in your eye that you're up to your old paranoia thing again. She wasn't piloting that house, you know. She was trapped in it. This would be one struggle you'd do well just to leave alone. The witch sighed. You may be right. You know, I'm getting used to stiff muscles in the morning. Sometimes I think that vengeance is habit-forming, too. A stiffness of the attitude. I keep hoping that the wizard will be toppled in my lifetime, and this aim seems to be at odds with happiness. I suppose I can't take on avenging the death of a sister I didn't get on all that well with anyway. Especially if the death is an accident, Glinda said. Glinda, said the witch, I know you must remember Fiyero, and you have heard of his death, 15 years ago. Of course, said she. Well, I had heard he died, under mysterious circumstances. I knew his wife, said the witch, and his in-laws. It was suggested to me once that he'd been carrying on an affair with you in the Emerald City. Glinda turned yellow-pink. My dear, she said, I was fond of Fiyero, and he was a good man and a fine statesman, but among other things, you will remember, he was dark-skinned. Even if I took up dalliances, an inclination I believe rarely benefits anyone. You are once again being suspicious and cranky to suspect me and Fiyero. The idea! And the witch realized, sinkingly, that this was of course true. The ugly skill at snobbery had returned to Glinda in her middle years. But for her part, Glinda had no real inkling that the witch was implicating herself as Fiyero's adulterous lover. Glinda was too fussed to listen that closely. The witch, in fact, alarmed her a little. It was not just the novelty of seeing her again, but the strange charisma Elphaba possessed, which had always put Glinda in the shade. Also, there was the thrill, basis interminable, which made Glinda shy and caused her to rush her words and to speak in a false, high voice like an adolescent. How quickly you could be thrown back to the terrible uncertainty of your youth. For when she chose to remember her youth at all, she could scarcely dredge up an ounce of recollection about that daring meeting with the wizard. She could recall far more clearly how she and Elfie had shared a bed on the road to the Emerald City, how brave that had made her feel, and how vulnerable, too. They walked for a way in a restless silence. Things might begin to improve now, said the witch after a time. I mean, Munchkinland will be a mess for a while. A tyrant is terrible, but at least he, or she, imposes order. The anarchy that follows the deposition of a tyrant can be bloodier than before. Still, things may work out all right. Father always said that when left to themselves, the Munchkinlanders had a great deal of common sense. And Nessie was, for all practical purposes, a foreigner. She was raised in Quadling country, and you know, she may have been half Quadling herself. I've come to realize. She was a foreign queen on this soil, despite her inherited title. With her gone, the Munchkinlanders might just right themselves. Bless her soul, said Glinda. Or do you still not believe in the soul? I can make no comment on souls of others, said the witch. They walked some more. Here and there the witch saw, as before, the totemic straw men, pinned to tunics and erected like effigies in the corners of fields. I find them somewhat creepy, she said to Glinda. Now one other thing I want to ask you. I asked this of Nessa once. Do you remember Madame Morrible's corralling us into her parlor and proposing we become 3 adepts, 3 high witches of Oz, sort of secret local priestesses, shaping public policy behind the scenes, contributing to the stability, or instability, of Oz as required by some unnamed higher authority? Oh, that farce, that melodrama, how could I forget it, said Glinda. I wonder, if we were put under a spell then, do you remember? She said we couldn't talk about it, and it didn't seem that we could. Well, we are talking about it, so if there was any truth to it, which I doubt, it's certainly worn off by now. But look what's happened to us. Nessa Rose was the Wicked Witch of the East. You know that's what they called her. Don't pretend to be so shocked. And I have a stronghold in the West. And I seem to have rallied the Arjikis around me by dint of the absence of their ruling family. And there you are, sitting pretty in the North with your bank accounts and your legendary skills at sorcery. Legendary nothing. I simply see to it that I am admired in the right circles, said Glinda. Now, my memory is just as good as yours, and Madame Morrible proposed that I be an adept of Gillikin, but that you be an adept of Munchkinland, and Nessa be an adept of Quadling Country. The Vinkus she didn't think worth bothering about. If she was seeing the future, she got it wrong. She got you and Nessa all wrong. Forget the details, said the witch tartly. I just mean, Glinda, is it possible we could be living our entire adult lives under someone's spell? How could we tell if we were the pawns of someone's darker game? I know. I can see it in your face. Elfie, you're sniffing conspiracy theories again. But you were there. You heard what I heard. How do you know your life hasn't been pulled by the strings of some malign magic? Well, I pray a lot, said Glinda. Not terribly genuinely, I admit, but I try. I think the unnamed god would have mercy on me and give me the benefit of the doubt, and release me from a spell if I had accidentally fallen under one. Don't you? Or are you still so atheistic? I have always felt like a pawn, said the witch. My skin color's been a curse. My missionary parents made me sober and intense. My school days brought me up against political crimes against animals. My love life imploded, and my lover died, and if I had any life's work of my own, I haven't found it yet, except in animal husbandry, if you can call it that. I'm no pawn, said Glinda. I take all the credit in the world for my own foolishness. Good gracious, dear, all of life is a spell. You know that. But you do have some choice. Well, I wonder, said the witch. They walked on. Graffiti was splattered on the sides of the granite plinths of statues. Now the shoes on the other foot. Glinda titched. Animal husbandry? She said. They crossed a little bridge. Bluebirds twinkled music above them like a sentimental entertainment. I sent this Dorothy girl on to the Wizard's City. Wow, let me try that again. I sent this Dorothy, this girl, on to the Emerald City, said Glinda. I told her I'd never seen the wizard. Well, I had to lie. Don't look at me like that. If I told her the truth about him, she would never have left here. I told her to ask him to send her home. With his reconnaissance spies all over Oz, and no doubt elsewhere, he has heard of Kansas, I'm sure. Nobody else has. That was a cruel thing to do, said the witch. She's such a harmless child. No one should take her seriously, said Glinda carelessly. If the Munchkinlanders started rallying around her, reunification might be a more bloody affair than we all hope. So you hope for reunification? Muttered the witch, disgusted. You support it? Besides, Glinda went on blithely, having some motherly instinct somewhere inside this pushed-up bosom of mine, I gave her Nessa's shoes as a sort of protection. You what? The witch whirled and faced Glinda. For a moment she was dumb with rage, but only for a moment. Not only does she come whomping out of the sky and stepping her big clumsy house all over my sister, but she gets the shoes too? Glinda, those shoes weren't yours to give away. My father made them for her, and furthermore, Nessa promised I could have them when she died. Oh, yes, said Glinda in a false calm, surveying the witch up and down. And they would make the perfect accessory for that glass of fashion outfit you have on. Come on, Elfie. Since when have you cared about shoes, of all things? Look at those army boots you have on. Whether I'd wear them or not is none of your concern. You can't go handing out a person's effects like that. What right had you? Papa reshaped those shoes from skills he learned from Turtleheart. You've stuck your fancy wand in where it wasn't wanted. I'll remind you, said Glinda, that those shoes were coming apart until I had them resoled, and I laced them through with a special binding spell of my own. Neither your father nor you did that much for her. Elfie, I stood by her when you abandoned her in Shiz, as you abandoned me. You did. Don't deny it. Stop those lightning bolt looks at me. I won't have it. I became her surrogate sister, and as an old friend, I gave her the power to stand upright by herself through those shoes. And if I made a mistake, I'm sorry, Elfie, but I still feel they were more mine to give away than yours. Well, I want them back, said the witch. Oh, put it behind you, will you? They're only shoes, said Glinda. You're behaving as if they're holy relics. They were shoes, and a bit out of style, truth be told. Let the girl have them. She has nothing else. Look how the people here thought of them, said the witch. She pointed to a stable on which was scrawled in broad red letters, "Walk all over you, you old witch." Please, give it a rest, said Glinda. I have such a headache coming on. Where is she? Said the witch. If you won't retrieve them, I'll get them myself. If I'd known you wanted them, said Glinda, trying to make things all right, I'd have saved them for you. But you have to see, Elfie, the shoes couldn't stay here. The ignorant pagan Munchkinlanders, Lurlinist all once you scratch the skin, they had put too much credit in those silly shoes. I mean, a magic sword I could understand, but shoes, please. I had to get them out of Munchkinland. You are working in collusion with the wizard to render Munchkinland ready for annexation, said the witch. You have no agenda of charity, Glinda. At least don't fool yourself. Or are you really under some rusty spell of Madame Morrible after all this time? I won't have you snapping at me, said Glinda. The girl has left. She's been on the road for a week now. She's headed west. I tell you, she's only a timid child and means no harm. She'd be distressed to know she'd taken something you wanted. There is no power in them for you, Elfie. The witch said, Glinda, if those shoes fall into the hands of the wizard, he'll use them somehow in a maneuver to re-annex Munchkinland. By now, they have much too significance to Munchkinlanders. The wizard mustn't have those shoes. Glinda reached out and touched the witch's elbow. They won't make your father love you any better, she said. The witch pulled back. They stood glaring at each other. They had too much in common history to come apart over a pair of shoes, yet the shoes were planted between them, a grotesque icon of their differences. Neither one could retreat or move forward. It was silly, and they were stuck, and someone needed to break the spell, but all the witch could do was insist. I want those shoes. Chapter 4. At the memorial service, Glinda and Sir Chuffrey perched in the balcony reserved for dignitaries and ambassadors. The wizard sent a representative, resplendent in his dress reds with the emerald cross marking quadrants on his chest, a crew of bodyguards at attention all around him. The witch sat below and did not meet Glinda's eyes. Frex wept until he brought on an attack of asthma, and the witch helped him out a side door, where he could catch his breath. After the service, the wizard's emissary approached the witch. He said, "You have been invited to an audience with the wizard. He is traveling by special diplomatic immunity via a phoenix to offer his condolences to the family this evening. You will be prepared to meet him at Colwyn Grounds this evening." "He can't come here," said the witch. "He wouldn't dare." "Those who now make the decisions think otherwise," said the emissary. "Be that as it may, he comes under cover of darkness, and only to speak to you and your family." "My father is not up to receiving the wizard," said the witch. "I won't have it." "He will see you, then," said the emissary. "He insists. He has questions of a diplomatic nature to put to you. But you are not to make this visit public, or it could go very hard on your father and your brother, and on you," he added, as if that was not already evident. She considered how she might use this command audience to her own advantage. Sarima, the safety of Frex, the fate of Fiyero. "I agree," she concluded. "I will meet him." And, despite herself, she was glad for a moment that Nessorose's magic shoes were safely out of the vicinity. As the vesper bells rang, the witch was summoned from her room by a Munchkinlander maid. "You will have to submit to a search," said the wizard's emissary, meeting her in an antechamber. "You must understand the protocol here." She concentrated on her fury as she was probed and prodded by the officers who ringed the weighted area. "What is this?" they said, when they found the page of the grimoire in her pocket. "Oh, that," she said, thinking fast. "His Highness will want to see that." "You can bring nothing with you," they told her, and they took the page from her. "By my bloodlines, I can reinstate the office of the eminent Throp tonight, and have your leader arrested," she called after them. "Do not tell me what I can and cannot do in this house." They paid her no mind, and ushered her into a small chamber, bare but for a couple of upholstered chairs set upon a flowery carpet. Along the baseboards, dust mice rolled in the draught. "His Highness, the Emperor Wizard of Oz," said an attendant, and withdrew. For a minute the witch sat alone. Then the wizard walked into the room. He was without disguise, a plain-looking older man wearing a high-collared shirt and a greatcoat, with a watch and fob hanging from a waistcoat pocket. His head was pink and mottled, and tufts of hair stuck out above his ears. He mopped his brow with a handkerchief and sat down, motioning the witch to sit too. She did not sit. "How do you do?" he said. "What do you want with me?" she answered. "There are two things," he said. "There is what I had come here to say to you, and then there is the matter of what you bring to my attention." "You talk to me," she said, "for I have nothing to say to you." "There is no point in beating around the bush," he said. "I would like to know your intentions about your position as the last eminence." "Had I any intention," she said, "it would be none of your business." "Ah, alas, it is my business, for reunification is under way," said the wizard, "even as we speak. I understand that Lady Glinda, bless her well-meaning foolishness, has sensibly evacuated both the unfortunate girl and the totemic shoes from the district, which should make annexation less troublesome. I should like to have those shoes in my possession to prevent their giving you ideas. So you see, I need to know your intentions in the matter. You are not, I take it, in warm sympathy with your sister's style of religious tyranny, But I hope you do not intend to set up shop here. If you do, we must strike a little bargain, something I was never able to do with your sister." "There is little for me here," said the witch, "and I am not suited to govern anyone, not even myself, it seems. Besides, there's the small matter of the army at, is it Red Windmill? The town below Kiamoko." "So that's why they've been there all these years," said the witch. "To keep you in check," he said. "An expense. But there you are. To spite you, I should reclaim the title of eminence," said the witch. "But I care little for these foolish people. What the Munchkinlanders do now is of no interest to me, as long as my father is left unharmed. If that is all—" "There is the other matter," he said. His manner became more lively. "You brought a page with you. I wonder where you got it." "That is mine, and your people have no right to it." "What I want is to know where you got it, and where can I find the rest. What will you give me if I tell you?" What could you want from me? This was why she had agreed to meet him. She drew a deep breath and said, "To know if Sarima, Dowager Princess of the Arjikis, is still alive, and where I might find her, and how I might negotiate her freedom." The wizard smiled. "How all things work together. Now, isn't it interesting that I could guess of your concern?" He waved a hand. Unseen attendants outside the open door ushered in a dwarf in clean white trousers and tunic. No, it wasn't a dwarf she saw. It was a young woman crouching. Chains sewn into the collar of her tunic ran through her clothes to her ankles, keeping her bent over. The chains were only 2 or 3 feet long. The witch had to peer to see for sure that it was Nor. She would be 16 by now, or 17, the age that Elfie had been when she went up to Crage Hall at Shiz. "Nor," said the witch. "Nor, are you there?" Nor's knees were filthy, and her fingers curled around the links of her bondage. Her hair was cut short, and welts were visible beneath the patchy tresses. She tossed her head as if listening to music, but she would not shift her gaze toward Elphaba. "Nor, it's Auntie Witch. I've come to bargain for your release at last," said the witch, improvising. But the wizard motioned the unseen attendants to usher Nor out of sight. "I'm afraid that is not possible," he said. "She is my protection from you, you see." "The others," said the witch, "I must know." "Everything is undocumented," said the wizard, "but I believe Sarima and her sisters are all dead." The witch's breath caught in her chest, the last hopes of forgiveness gone. But the wizard was continuing. "Perhaps some underling who had no authority in the matter had an appetite for a bloodbath. It's so hard to get reliable help in the armed forces." "Irji?" said the witch, gripping her elbows. "Now, he had to die," said the wizard apologetically. "He was the next in line to be prince, wasn't he?" "Tell me it was not brutal," said the witch. "Oh, tell me so." "The paraffin necklace," admitted the wizard. "Well, it was a public affair. A statement needed to be made. There now, against my better judgment, I have told you what you wanted to know. Now it is your turn. Where can I find the book that this page is from?" The wizard took the paper out of his pocket and pressed it out onto his lap. His hands were trembling. He looked at the page. "A spell for the administration of dragons," he said wonderingly. "Is that what it is?" she said, surprised. "I could not be sure." "Of course. You must have had a hard time making this out," he said. "You see, it does not come from this world. It comes from my world." He was mad, obsessed with other worlds, like her father. "You are not telling the truth," said the witch, hoping she was right. "Oh, what care I for truth," he said. "But I am truthful, as it happens." "Why would you want that?" said the witch, trying to buy some time, trying to figure out how she could barter for Nor's life. I don't even know what it is. I don't believe you do either." "I do," he said. "This is an ancient manuscript of magic, generated in a world far away from this one. It was long thought to be merely legendary, or else destroyed in the dark onslaughts of the northern invaders. It had been removed from our world for safety by a wizard more capable than I. It is why I came to Oz in the first place," he continued, almost talking to himself, as old men are prone to do. "Madame Blavatsky located it in a crystal ball, and I made the appropriate sacrifices and arrangements to travel here 40 years ago. I was a young man, full of ardor and failure. I had not intended to rule a country here, but just to find this document and return it to its own world, and to study its secrets there." "What kind of sacrifices?" she said. "You do not stint from murder here." "Murder is a word used by the sanctimonious," he said. "It is an expedient expression with which they condemn any courageous action beyond their ken. What I do, cannot be murder. For coming from another world, I cannot be held accountable to the silly conventions of a naive civilization. I am beyond that lisping childish recital of wrongs and rights." His eyes did not burn as he spoke. They were sunk behind veils of cold blue detachment. "If I give the Grimmery to you, will you go?" she said. "Give me Noor, and take your brand of evil, and leave us alone at last?" "I am too old to travel now," he said. "And why should I give up what I have worked for all these years?" "Because I will use this book and destroy you with it if you don't," she said. "You cannot read it," he said. "You are of Oz, and you cannot do such a thing." "I can read more of it than you suspect," she said. "I do not know what it all means. I have seen pages about unleashing the hidden energies of matter. I have seen pages about tampering with the orderly flow of time. I have seen disquisitions about weapons too vile to use, about how to poison water, about how to breed a more docile population. There are diagrams of weapons of torture. Though the drawings and the words seem misty to my eyes, I can continue to learn. I am not too old." "Those are ideas of great interest to our times," he said, though he seemed surprised that she had taken in as much as she had. "Not to me," she said. "You have done enough already. If I give it to you, will you surrender Noor to me?" "You should not trust my promise," he said, sighing. "Really, my child." But he continued to stare at the page she had handed over to him. "One might learn how to subjugate a dragon to one's own purposes," he mused, and flipped the page over to read what was on the back. "Please," she said. "I think I have never begged for anything before in my life, but I beg of you, it is not right that you should be here. Assuming for a moment that you can sometimes tell the truth, go back to that other world, go anywhere. Just leave the throne, leave us alone. Take the book with you. Do with it what you will. Let me accomplish at least this in my life." "In exchange for my telling you about the kith and kin of your beloved Fiyero, you are to tell me where the book is," he reminded her. "Well, I won't," she said. "I have revised my offer. Give me Noor, and I will get you the Grimmery. The book is already hidden so deeply that you will never find it. You have not the skill." She hoped she was being persuasive. He stood and pocketed the page. "I shall not have you executed," he said. "At least, not at this audience. I will have that book, for here or for there. You cannot bind me to a promise. I am beyond being bound by words. I will think of what you have said, but meanwhile I will keep my young slave girl at my side, for she is my defense against your anger." "Give her to me," said the witch. Now, act like a man, not like a mountebank. Give her to me, and I will send you that book." "It is for others to bargain," said the wizard. Rather than sounding offended, he seemed merely depressed, as if he were talking to himself instead of to her. I do not bargain, but I do think. I will wait and see how the reunification with Munchkinland goes, and if you do not interfere, I may be kindly disposed to think about what you have said. But I do not bargain. The witch breathed in deeply. I have met you before, you know, she said. You once granted me an interview in the throne room when I was a schoolgirl from Shiz. Is that so? He said. Oh, of course. You must have been one of the darling girls of Madame Morrible, that wonderful aide and helpmeet, in her dotage now, but in her heyday. What she taught me about breaking the spirits of wilful young girls. No doubt, like the rest, you were taken with her. She tried to recruit me to serve some master. Was it you? Who can say? We are always hatching some plot or another. She was good fun. She would never be as crude as that. He pointed to the open door through which crouching Nora could still be seen, humming to herself. She could manage girl students with much greater finesse. He was about to leave the room, but he turned back at the door. You know, now I remember. It was she who warned me about you. She told me you had betrayed her. You had rejected her offers. She was the one who advised me to have you watched. It is because of her that we have found out. It was because of her that we found out about your little romance with the diamond-skinned prince. No! So you met me before. I had forgotten. In what form did I appear? She had to clutch herself to keep from vomiting. You were a skeleton, with lighted bones, dancing in a storm. Oh, yes, that was clever, that was. Were you impressed? Sir, she said, I think you are a very bad wizard. And you, he answered, stung, are only a caricature of a witch. Wait, she called as he headed away through the panel. Wait, please. How will I receive your answer? I will send a messenger to you before the year is out, he said. The panel slammed tightly behind him. She fell to her knees, her forehead dropping almost to the floor. At her sides her fists clenched. She had no intention of surrendering the Grimmery to such a monster, ever. If need be, she would die to keep it out of his hands. But could she arrange a deception so that he could surrender Nor to her first? She left a few days later, first making sure that her father was not to be turned out of his room in Colwyn grounds. He did not want to join her in the Vincus. He was too old to make the journey. Besides, he thought that Shell would come back sooner or later looking for him. The witch knew that Frex wouldn't live long, grieving so for Nesselrose. She tried to put away her anger at him when she said goodbye for what she suspected was the last time. As she strode through the forecourt of Colwyn grounds, she crossed paths once again with Glinda. But both women averted their eyes and hurried their feet along their reposing ways. For the witch, the sky was a huge boulder pressing down on her. For Glinda, it was much the same. But Glinda wheeled about and cried out, "Oh, Elfie!" The witch did not turn. They never saw each other again. All right. Let's see here. How far? I think we'll go 2 more chapters, I think. Chapter 5. She knew that she couldn't afford the time to mount a full-scale chase against this Dorothy. Glinda ought to be hiring accomplices to track those shoes down. It was the least she could do, with her money and her connections. Still, the witch stopped here and there along the yellow brick road, and asked those taking an afternoon tipple at a roadside public house if they had seen a foreign girl in blue and white checks, walking with a small dog. There was some animated discussion as the patrons of the pub struggled to decide whether the green witch intended the child harm. Apparently, the child had that rare skill of enchanting strangers, but when they had satisfied themselves that no harm was likely, they responded. Dorothy had come through a few days ago, and it was said that she had spent the night with someone a mile or two down the road before continuing on. The well-kept house with the yellow-domed roof, they said, and the minaret chimney. You can't miss it. The witch found it, and she found Bock on a bench in the yard, dandling a baby on his knee. "You," he said, "I know why you're here. Milla, look who's here. Come quickly. It's Miss Elphaba from Crage Hall, in the flesh." Milla came, a couple of naked children clutching her apron strings. Flushed from laundry, she lifted her straggling hair out of her eyes and said, "Oh my, and we forgot to dress in our finery today. Look who's come to laugh at us in our rustic state." "Isn't she something?" said Bock fondly. Milla had kept her figure, though there were 4 or 5 offspring in evidence, and no doubt more out of sight. Bock had gone barrel-chested, and his fine spiky hair had grown prematurely silver, giving him a dignity he had never had as an undergraduate. "We heard about your sister's death, Elfie," he said, "and we sent our condolences to your father. We didn't know where you were. We heard you had come here following Nessie's ascension to governor of Munchkinland, but we didn't know where you went back to when you left. It's good to see you again." The sourness that she had felt over Glinda's betrayal was ameliorated by Bock's common courtesy and direct speech. She had always liked him for his passion and for his sense. "You are a sight, you are," she said. "Ricla, get up off that stool and let our guest have a seat," said Milla to one of the children. "And Yellow Gauge, run to Uncle's and borrow some rice and onions and yogurt. Hurry now, so I can start a meal." "I won't be staying, Milla. I'm in a hurry," said the witch. "Yellow Gauge, don't bother. I'd love to spend some time, to catch up on all your news, but I'm trying to locate this girl stranger who passed by here, someone said, and stayed a night here or two." Bock shoved his hands in his pockets. "Well, she did that, Elfie. What do you want with her?" "I want my sister's shoes. They belong to me." Bock seemed as surprised as Glinda had. "You weren't ever into fancy trappings like society's shoes," he said. "Yes, well, perhaps I'm about to make my belated debut in Emerald Society at last, and have a coming-out ball." But she was being tart with Bock, and didn't want that. "It's a personal matter, Bock. I want the shoes. My father made them, and they're mine now, and Glinda gave them to this girl without my permission. And woe betide Munchkinland if they fall into the wizard's hands. What is she like, this Dorothy?" "We adored her," he said, "plain and straightforward as mustard seed. She shouldn't have any problems, as though it's a long walk for a child from here to the Emerald City. But all who see her are bound to help her, I'd say. We sat up till the moon rose, chatting about her home and Oz, and what she might expect on the road. She hasn't traveled widely before this." "How charming," said the witch. "How novel for her." "Are you brewing one of your campaigns?" said Milla, suddenly cannily. "You know, Elfie, when you didn't come back from the Emerald City, with Glinda that time, everyone said you'd gone mad, and had become an assassin. People always did like to talk, didn't they? That's why I call myself a witch now, the Wicked Witch of the West, if you want the full glory of it. As long as people are going to call you a lunatic anyway, why not get the benefit of it? It liberates you from convention." "You're not wicked," said Bock. "How do you know? It's been so long," said the witch. But she smiled at him. Bock returned the smile warmly. "Glinda used her glitter beads, and you used your exotic looks and background. But weren't you just doing the same thing, trying to maximize what you had in order to get what you wanted? People who claim that they're evil usually are no worse than the rest of us." He sighed. "It's people who claim that they're good, or anyway better than the rest of us, that you have to be wary of." "Like Nessa Rose," said Milla meanly. But she was telling the truth, too, and they all nodded. The witch took one of Bock's children on her knee and clucked at it absent-mindedly. She liked children no more than she ever had, but years of dealing with monkeys had given her an insight into the infant mentality she had never grasped before. The baby cooed and wet itself with pleasure. The witch handed it back quickly before the wet could soak through her skirt. "Regardless of the shoes," said the witch, "do you think a child like that should be sent unarmed straight into the jaws of the wizard? Has she been warned? Has she been told what a monster he is?" Bock looked uncomfortable. "Well, Elfie, I don't like speaking ill of the wizard. I'm afraid there are too many pitchers with big ears in this community, and you never know who is on what side. Between you and me, I hope Nessa's death will result in some sort of a sensible government. But if we are overrun with an invading army in 2 months, I wouldn't want it bruited about that I'd been bad-mouthing the invaders. And there are rumors of reunification." "Oh, don't tell me you're hoping for that," she said. "Not you too." "I'm not hoping for anything, except for peace and quiet," he said. "I have enough trouble getting crops out of these rocky fields. That's what I was in Shiz to learn, do you remember? Agriculture. I've put the best of my efforts into our small holdings, and we only managed to eke out a living." But he looked rather proud about it, and so did Milla. "And I guess you have a couple of cows in your barn," said the witch. Cows, capital C. "Oh, you're testy. Of course we don't. Do you think I could forget what we worked for? You and Crope and Tibbet and I? It was the high point of a very quiet life." "You didn't have to live a quiet life, Bock," said the witch. "Don't be superior. I didn't say I was sorry for it. Neither the excitement of a righteous campaign nor the relief of a family and a farm. Did we ever do any good back then?" "If nothing else," said the witch, "we helped Dr. Dillamond. He was very much alone in his work, you know. And the philosophical basis for the resistance grew out of his pioneering hypothesis. His findings outlived him. They still do." She did not mention her own experiments with the winged monkeys. Her practical applications were directly derived from Dr. Dillamond's theories. We had no idea we were at the end of a golden age," Bock said, sighing. "When's the last time you saw an animal in the professions?" "Ugh, don't get me started," the witch said. She couldn't stay seated. "Do you remember? You hoarded those notes of Dillamond's. You never really let me know what they were all about. Did you make any use of them?" "I learned enough from his research to keep questioning," said the witch. But she felt bombastic and wanted to stop talking. It made her feel too sad, too desperate. Milla saw this, and with a brusque charity declared, "Those times are over and gone, and good riddance to them." We were hopelessly high-spirited. Now we're the thick-waisted generation, dragging along our children behind us and carrying our parents on our backs, and we're in charge, while the figures who used to command our respect are wasting away. "The wizard doesn't," said the witch. "Well, Madame Morrible does," said Milla. "Or so Shen told me in her last letter." "Oh?" said the witch. "Yes, that's right," said Bock. "Though from her bed of pain, Madame Morrible continues to advise our Emperor Wizard on policy matters about education. I'm surprised that Glinda didn't send Dorothy to Shiz to study with Madame Morrible. Instead, she directed her to the Emerald City." The witch could not picture Dorothy, but for a moment she saw the stooped figure of Noor. She saw a crowd of girls like Noor, in chains and yokes, drifting around Madame Morrible the way those schoolgirls had all those years ago. "Elfie, sit down again. You don't look well," said Bock. "This is a hard time for you. You didn't get along well with Nessa Rose, I seem to remember." But the witch didn't want to think of her sister. "It's a rather ugly name, Dorothy," she said. "Don't you think?" She sat back down heavily, and Bock relaxed on a stool a few feet away. "I don't know," he said. "Actually, we had a chat about it. She said that the king of her homeland was a man named Theodore. Her teacher explained that the name meant gift of God, and that this was a sign that he was ordained to be king or prime minister. Dorothy remarked that Dorothy was a sort of backward Theodore, but the teacher looked it up and said, no, Dorothy meant goddess of gifts. Well, I know what she can give me, said the witch. She can give me my shoes. Are you trying to say that you think she was a gift of God, or that she is some sort of queen or goddess? Bock, you used to not go in for superstition. I'm not saying anything of the sort. I'm having a conversation on word derivations, he said calmly. Let others, more enlightened than I, ferret out the hidden meanings of life. But I do think it interesting that her name so resembles the name of her king. Milla said, well, I think she's a holy little girl, ordinary and sanctified just as any child is, no more, no less. Yellow Gage, get your paws off that lemon tart. I can see you from here, or I'll whip you from now to eternity. The Dorothy child reminded me of what Ozma might have been like, or might yet be like, if she ever comes out of the deep sleep she's supposed to be enchanted into. She sounds like a little fright, said the witch. Ozma, Dorothy, all this talk about save your children, I have always detested it. You know what it is, said Bock, thinking carefully. Since we're talking about the old days, it comes back to me. I wonder if you remember that medieval painting I once found in the library at Three Queens? The one with the female figure, cradling the beast. There was a sort of tenderness and awfulness in that painting. Well, there's something in Dorothy that reminds me of that unnamed figure. You might even call it the unnamed goddess. Is that sacrilegious or what? Dorothy has this sweet charity toward her dog, a pretty, dreadful little beast. And Whiffy? You wouldn't believe how repugnant. Once she swooped the dog up in her arms and bent over it, crooning to it, in just the same pose as that medieval figure. Dorothy is a child, but she has a heaviness of bearing like an adult, and a gravity you don't often find in the young. It's very becoming. Elfie, I was charmed by her, to tell you the truth. He cracked a couple of walnuts and Eastern macarons and passed them around. I am sure you will be too. I would like to avoid her at all cost at the sound of it, said the witch. The last thing I'm in a mood for these days is to be charmed by juvenile purity, but I insist on recovering my property. The shoes are very magic, are they? Said Milla, or is it just symbolic? How do I even know? Said the witch. I haven't ever put them on, but if I could get them, and they could walk me out of this parlous life, I wouldn't be sorry. Anyway, everyone blamed the shoes for Nessa's tyranny. I think it's good of Glinda to have gotten them out of Munchkinland. The child is smuggling them abroad without even knowing it. Glinda has sent the girl to the Emerald City, said the witch pointedly. If the wizard gets hold of them, it'll be a license to march into Munchkinland, and you're fools to sit on the fence as if it makes no difference whether he does or not. You'll stay for something? At least some tea, said Milla soothingly. Look, I've had Clorinda make a fresh pot, and we've saffron cream. Remember the saffron cream party after Amma Clutch's funeral? The witch breathed heavily for a moment. There was a pain in her esophagus. She did not like to remember those trying times. And Glinda had known full well that Madame Morrible was behind the death of Amma Clutch. Now, as Lady Glinda, she was part of the same ruling class. It was hideous. And Dorothy, whatever her origins, was still only a child, and they were using her to help rid Munchkinland of those damned totemic shoes, or to get those shoes to the wizard, just as Madame Morrible had used her students as adepts. I can't stop here chattering like an idiot, she cried, startling them, spilling the bowl of nuts to the ground. Didn't we waste enough time talking ourselves to death in school? She grabbed for her broom and her hat. Bock looked startled and almost fell backward off his seat. Well, Elfie, why are you taking offense? She was beyond answering. She whirled in a small cyclone of black skirts and scarves and ran out to the road. She hurried on foot along the yellow brick road, hardly realizing that a plan was forming in her mind. but she was thinking so hard that for a while she completely forgot she was carrying her broom, and it was only when she paused to rest and leaned on it that she remembered it. Bock, Glinda, even her father, Frex. How disappointing they all seemed now. Had these folks deteriorated in virtue since her youth? Or had she been so naive then to see them for what they were? She felt disgusted with people and longed to be home. She was too out of sorts to seek lodging in an inn or a public house. It was warm enough to stay outside and rest. She lay awake at the edge of a field of barley. The moon rose, huge as it sometimes is when first breaking over the horizon. It backlit a stake with a crossbar, standing as if awaiting a body to crucify, or a scarecrow to hang. Why hadn't she joined forces with Nessarose and raised armies against the wizard? Old family resentments had gotten in the way. Nessarose had asked to help in governing Munchkinland, and the witch had denied her request. Instead, the witch had gone back to Kiamoko these 7 years. She had squandered the chance to merge forces with her sister. Virtually every campaign she'd set out for herself had ended in failure. She squirmed in the light of the moon, and at midnight, tortured by the thoughts of Nessa's death, the physical fact of being squished like a bug, finally taking on some imaginative shape in the witch's fantasies, she arose and took a new path. Dorothy would no doubt follow the yellow brick road to the Emerald City, and someone as exotic as she could easily be located anywhere along the route. The witch would go and try to accomplish the task she set out for herself 15 years ago. Madame Morrible still waited to be killed. And with that, we will call it a close for the day. So, the next read is the second part of the finale of Wicked. I am so excited to see how all of this plays out. Because it's very different, isn't it? It's so different from like the original Wizard of Oz video that we all saw as kids. It's different from the Wizard of Oz, the Wicked show, the Wicked movie. Again, both of those things were derived from this. The Broadway show, the movie, came from this book. But it's amazing the differences, the themes that are so much ignored in that are celebrated and talked about and given body in here that are widely ignored in the movie and the Broadway show. I think the differences are astounding. So I feel like I haven't been giving you guys any spoilers about anything. I hope I haven't. I don't think I have. But regardless, I hope you guys enjoyed this reading. I hope you are as excited about the very final reading as I am for next week. With that being said, I hope you guys have a fantastic week. Keep yourselves safe, keep yourselves hydrated, and I will see you next time. Bye.